If you are watching this on YouTube or listening to this podcast, wherever you are today, please hit that subscribe button, that follow button, so that you can stay current on the material that we are providing. But not only that, you then help us to spread the word to more people. You are vital in this mission to reaching our world of people just like you who are living in this nightmare. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism Podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism Podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson, and I thank you everyone out there for joining us today. Today we have Eleanor Marks here with us again, and I love these times together. Eleanor, thank you so much for doing this. How are you doing today?
Great. It's been a good week. Can't ask for more sometimes.
So glad to hear that. And I want to apologize to everyone out there because I'm fighting allergies real bad. 'Tis the season, things are in bloom, and so if I sound a little funny, I leave it to my producer to fix that, and he's actually quite good at it. So, how about where you are?
Renee,
Allergies going where you are?
so far it's quiet. Don't jinx me. I'm feeling pretty good nasal wise, but everything is blooming here, so it's maybe just a matter of time.
Okay.
Renee, I was having a conversation with a client this week about, in hindsight, when do you wish you would have left? Or when was there a certain point of like, I should have filed for divorce sooner? And had me thinking deep thoughts. But for you, was there a perfect time? Not perfect, but a time where you're like, I should have done this then.
You know, that's such a tough question to answer. And it's a great question. And I run into it a lot myself and the people that I work with, that there is no perfect answer. You're right. You corrected yourself when you said perfect, quotes. Let's do air quotes here for the word perfect. But even in looking back, that's such an impossible question for me to answer, because if I look back 10 years earlier, I was clueless. I was so clueless as to what was going on. So if I had left 10 years earlier, I wouldn't have had any understanding or any awareness of what I was dealing with, what I was facing, or why. And so the timing then wouldn't have been right with the knowledge I had then, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That if I had tried to leave at that point, I think it would have been a total disaster, because I would have blamed myself even more than I already did, because I was currently blaming myself for the problems in the marriage. And so that definitely would not have been the right time. Now, if I had the knowledge, if I had the awareness that I had, when I did divorce, if I had that sooner, then that timing might have been a lot sooner. So for me, the question comes of, when would have been maybe a more perfect timing for me to have learned about covert narcissism?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a game changer. And if I had learned, if I could go back and change anything, that's what I would change. I wish I had learned about it sooner, because I think I would have been I would have come to grips with it sooner. I would have been able to help my boys at a much younger age. And then maybe I'd divorce, before we head into those teenage years. And so let's bump it back 10 years. I guess that's, in my eyes, what I would call the time that I wish I had known about covert narcissism, was before my boys really went through those 10 to 16 years, the age of 10 to 16.
Yeah. I jump at that. I wish I had known about it in high school. All right. To even make better decisions.
Yes. Let's go way back. Yes. I wish my parents had known about that.
Yeah. They taught me how to sew a button on in high school, but like nothing about psychological and emotional abuse.
Right.
But
So that's kind of where I approach that question, is I wish I had known about it sooner. And then I do think that I probably would have divorced sooner. I would have brought things to a head sooner. I would have faced this sooner, all of that. And so in that regard, I do wish that had happened, but I do not live with regrets. I do want to make that very clear. I am very, very pleased with where I am today and the path that my boys are on. And so in that regard, I look back with no regrets. So to everyone, there is no blueprint that says this is the right way.
And you'll know when you know.
Yes.
So it's definitely a process.
Yes. How about you? Do you have an answer to
Um,
the question?
so my ex is an alcoholic, and probably 10 years prior, there was a discovering and tagging the term alcoholic to him, and a big decision of, am I going to continue on this way? There was lying going on in there, but I kept making the excuses. Oh, he's in a hard spot. This is new. This is right. Probably then would have been a good time, but again, my kids would have been 10 years younger. I really am thankful of the age my kids were when I did do this. They were basically young adults. I feel that it helps me do some of the coaching I do because of their age, and I don't have to be as hands-on mom as I would with toddlers. So, but I don't regret anything either. I did it when I did it, and when I felt it was a good time to jump. I had enough kind of situations and evidence that I'm like, yes, I cannot stay in this anymore. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say that for those who are like, when you get to that bare bones of your own energy that's left, like it just wears you down, wears you down, wears you down. That is a really hard time to try to then go through a divorce. I do encourage people to, let's get a little bit of healing first. Let's get some awareness in there. Let's get some support around you. Let's build you up a little bit before you go tackle that beast.
Yeah. I say to a lot of clients, you're never pushed down to your lowest and then asked to stand up the tallest in making that decision to divorce an individual like we're kind of up against. So it's a big contrast.
It is.
Big contrast.
Yeah, it is.
So we have a good question this week,
Okay.
which had me thinking a lot. It's a short question, which is different than last week's where we had
Yes.
so much to both of them. This is from Graham. He is just asking about isolating dynamics of a covert narcissistic relationship.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but I definitely went into the first part of covert narcissist isolating you or the victim from people, but then I also saw it as a victim isolating yourself for self-protection. So I'm not sure which way Graham meant, but hopefully we're going to hit both of them here and cover both parts.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great topic, and it does come from both sides, like what you're describing. There's isolating tactics that come from the covert narcissist, but like I've said before, covert narcissistic abuse gets inside of us and we start abusing ourselves. And so it's yet another dynamic that plays out that way, because then we start to isolate ourselves for various reasons. So if we dive into that first, maybe we dive into, at least for me, the way it played out was the isolation was coming from his behaviors towards me, in my dynamics. One of the ways that played out for me is going out with my friends. If I went out in the evening with my friends, I was coming home to such a train wreck in the house. The environment in the home was so painful that I just thought it's not worth it. I just quit going out with my friends. Like I really quit accepting their invitations to dinner. And it wasn't that I was going that much. It was dominantly Wednesday nights after choir practice. It was a one night a week. But even that became impossible because of the environment at home. So I would come home to, all three of them in their own separate rooms, everybody upset. And at such young ages, the two boys were mad and upset, and they could voice it, kind of not, what was going on. And I would talk to him. And it was almost like, for him, yes, he was mad at them, but he was mad. It was almost like an indignant anger. Like, how dare you not be perfect in your behavior? It was like it was a prick to his ego as the perfect parent. And so, narcissistic parents have this image of themselves that they're the perfect parent, and these little, monsters in their house are their little mini me. And so they have to be perfect. And so when kids do kid things, it wounds their ego, because that little miniature me that they see it as little mini me. And so they're perfect. So their mini me has to be perfect. And when they're not, it was not just that he was upset the kids were kids. He was upset because his kids weren't perfect. It was a wounded ego that was coming out. And so it was like a victim mode and mixed in with this anger, mixed in with this wounded ego.
Yeah. You learned not to go out with friends and not have to come home to that, right? You learn the pattern. You're like, well, I'm not going to start the domino effect here
Right.
to get to the end.
No, I found myself, the way the thoughts first came into my mind was I had to be home because I could soothe the environment. I could play peacekeeper. I could take care of the kids so that he didn't have to. I could, referee so that he didn't have to. And I knew I could do it gracefully, like I could do it patiently, and I could, over time, because I got so worn down, I actually got worse at that. But at that point, it was because, okay, this is my duty, my responsibility. It's my job to make sure the environment stays peaceful.
Yeah. Be the buffer.
Yes.
Be the buffer.
How about
one of the other parts? I definitely, looking back, there was retaliation when I would go out. He would look like a great, go out with your friends, go on out, but then I'd pay for it. And it took a while to see the pattern. It was confusing, right? You get that emotional whiplash of like, but you said I could go, and this doesn't make sense. But right, there's not a lot of sense to be made in any of this. I've also heard people say that they are not allowed to go see friends, but not said you're not allowed to go. There's a covert way of it, like, well, I can't believe you hang out with them, right? To make about your friends, or whatever, spin the wheel on whatever excuse, or even hearing, I hate when you go out with them. Does it mean you don't love me? Do you not want to spend time with me? And then you're kind of guilted to, okay, well, I won't go out with them. I'll stay home with you. And here you are from hanging out with solid people. And one step further, it prevents you from asking or having deep conversations with friends of like, does this happen in your marriage? And to find out that like, oh, it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right, kind of cutting the odds down there.
Yeah. I went through some of the same thing. I mean, absolutely, with what you're voicing, that it would be, well, I can't believe you're going out with them. Don't you want to do that with me? Why don't you go out to dinner with me? Why don't you, and even though I had been out to dinner with him, twice that week already, but I go one dinner with a friend and I was getting that guilt trip.
I never quite saw it. I had a pretty wicked smear campaign go against me. And, I lost my mother and my only sibling in it. And for the longest time, I kind of looked at it as a jerk move. I mean, my words were a little bit more colorful than that, but just a jerk move. And the more education I got, I'm like, oh, that's a way to isolate you from a support system that you desperately need at that point. And, from resources, whether it be like financial help too, to try to get through this as you're cut off from everything. And yeah, it worked. It worked quite well.
Yes. And it is a very effective form of isolation, and it's abusive in and of itself. Another piece of that is when they say, well, I can't believe you'd talk about our personal problems with other people. This is private.
Yeah.
These are our personal issues, and it's this, that's in and of itself, that's another form of abuse, because I'm going to treat you how I treat you. I'm going to treat you, even if I treat you good, bad, or indifferent, but then I'm going to tell you, you can't go talk to anybody else about it. Well, if I treat you badly, let's say I'm hitting you, I'm sexually abusing you, but don't go tell anyone about it. That's like a child abuse situation where you tell the child, don't tell these secrets. These are our secrets. That's abuse. And the same is true of a marriage. Just because you're an adult doesn't change that, to tell you, I'm going to treat you this way, and then don't you go tell anybody.
Yeah. A very covert way of making you feel bad and guilty about bringing something that's bothering you up to your friends. I can't believe you tell them our personal laundry, or airing our personal laundry. And right, it keeps you quiet because you don't want to do it. You don't want to offend them again. You don't want to be the, blabbing around or whatever.
Well, and there's just enough of an element inside of you that says, well, maybe they're right. We should handle our own problems. There's just enough self-reflection often in the victim of this to trigger that guilt of, oh man, I really shouldn't talk, about my husband this way or my wife this way.
Yeah. There's also the physical aspect of literally isolating you, of moving to a different town or a different country for a job that's maybe the same of what they have, but you're like, oh, but he says or she says it's going to be so great, and now you're in a town where you have no friends, no family. You want to support their career, and so you make this move, and now you're just in nowhere land.
Yeah.
And then trying to do a divorce in a state that you don't, it's very hard to survive in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people in that.
It is crucial. Everybody out there listening, it is crucial that you get a support system. Even if it's one person to start with, but you've got to have a support system, around you.
Yeah. You want to flip to the other side of that?
Absolutely.
Isolating?
Absolutely.
The self-isolating, the turning in on yourself. We've heard it called you're a shell of yourself. It's kind of like when the education is starting of what's going on, the light's getting a little bit brighter. Did that really just happen again? And the confusion, the fog is setting in, and you don't know which way to go. And you start becoming, maybe sometimes friends start seeing like, hey, what's up? You're not as outgoing as you used to be, not as bubbly. I know I probably look like a zombie back in the days, just staring ahead, trying to like spin some wheels in my head of, now what am I going to do? Can I let that slide again? And how to proceed. And so you start cutting yourself off from the world. Did you experience that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember feeling like there's no one else in the world who gets this. There's no one else living this way. Look at all these marriages around me. They look great. They're doing good. They communicate well. Oh, they're so supportive of each other. And then I realized that we looked that way too. We looked like that's what was going on, but I knew it wasn't. And my mind still didn't go to, well, I bet there's other people living this. My mind went to, I'm the only person in the world living this. And so it's, yes, you isolate. And another reason for that isolation for me was because it was so hard to explain. It was so hard to, like, how would I put into words what is going on to my, say, best friend who's in a healthy marriage, and or at least from what I see is, and I was right, she is in a healthy marriage. But how do I put this in words to her? Because even trying to put it in words to myself, I sound petty. I sound trivial. And so that just isolated me even further because I didn't feel like I could even explain it, because what are they going to think of me now?
Yeah. Even if you can get it into words or somehow, piece something together, there are the points where you do tell somebody and they don't believe you. And so now you learn, I'm not going to speak up again. I'm not going to it's a horrible feeling. And you learn that at that point, the world is not a safe place for you. And, you see people who you might tell, but then they are openly protecting your spouse or saying how great they are. And, there they are laughing with them. And you, again, turn in on yourself even more because your support system isn't in place yet and it's not solid. And
right. No, that's absolutely true. And the comments you get back when you finally start to open that door, like if you, like you're saying, and you just kind of peek through one, okay, I'm just going to like say a little and see what happens here. And the response you get back is, oh, but they're such a great guy, or that, but she's such a great woman. And look at all these things. And they flip it like the script's been flipped in your world forever. They flip it to all the things they're doing that are right, and you feel completely invalidated or, you say something and you're kind of describing what's going on, and they shift it to, oh, that happened to me too. And here's what happened. And I can't believe it. I got mad at them, but it got better. And again, they're not seeing that this is a larger problem. And they might even resonate with that one example, but in a healthy marriage, that one example disappears. Whereas here it doesn't. And so it just feels impossible to try to explain it and then when you get invalidated, you hide. Yeah. The world becomes not safe.
Yeah. Oh, it's a hard time too, piecing it together, those early stages. I mean, it's all hard, but especially that
Do you
time.
remember the first person you told what was going on?
I do. And I am eternally grateful that they, didn't blow it off. And in fact, they worked in the psychology world, and they're like, hey, I think there's more to this. I think you should look into cluster B personality disorders or something along those lines. And that's where, right, the first, check. And I'm grateful that it was a really good experience instead of what it can. Do you remember who you talked to first?
I do. It was at a coffee shop with one of my dearest friends ever. And I finally opened up to her and just said, I'm drowning. And I started to just kind of describe what was going on. And she was incredibly supportive and put her arms around me. And she was the one, in fact, that talked me into going and seeing a therapist. She said, you need to go talk to somebody. Now, of course, she kept telling me that for about a year before I actually did. Because I kept going, no, I don't need a therapist. We're okay. We can get through this. And then we kept meeting for coffee. And she's like, okay, you need to go see a therapist. So
better late than never.
I'm eternally grateful to her for pushing me on that path.
I think that's why the Facebook group is so strong. I mean, like we hear it multiple times, like everybody in this group will understand. Thanks for letting me vent. Complete strangers, but we completely get it. Even though your best friend looks at you with a blank stare when you try to describe it.
Yeah. When one thing I do know that I have absolutely seen over and over, when you are talking to somebody who gets it, you know it. You know, there's a recognition there that when you're talking to them and they get it, it's so crystal clear.
Yeah. It's a wonderful time, wonderful connection. Unfortunately,
yes. And I will add to that the Facebook group is amazing for those connections, just like you're describing. The group coaching environment, I will say, is of all the work that I do, is the most powerful. Is that connection in the group, because you're not hearing it just from one person. You're hearing it now from 8, other people who get it. And so even if our stories are a little different, you're going to connect with so many different people and their parts of the stories. It's such a powerful environment.
It is. It's a great environment too. Very comforting.
Yeah, very much so. So, Eleanor, thank you. And thank you out there, everyone, for listening. But Eleanor, thank you for joining me. I so much enjoy these conversations with you.
I do too. I look forward to them when we do them.
Awesome. So have a great rest of your day. I hope you've got a good day planned. At least got a weekend coming, right here in front of us.
Right around the corner.
Right around the corner. So, all right, everyone out there, thank you so much for joining us today. And I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism Podcast with your host, Renee Swanson. Be sure to check out our website at www.covertnarcissism.com. There you will find many resources just for you to help you on this journey. You can also reach out to me by email at Renee, RENEE, at cnglifecoaching.com. Those letters are CNG, as in Covert Narcissism Group. I do look forward to hearing from you. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson and the Covert Narcissism Podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. It does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.